Okay, so my story picks up after living in the car for some time. I had lived in the car for I don't even know how many months, but I was in there. But I got an upgrade. I actually, believe it or not, at the age of 17, I got an apartment. Yeah. So, yeah, shocker. I was still in high school. I was a senior in high school, and I had an apartment, my own apartment. So I went from the car to the apartment. It was a big time upgrade. There's no question about that. Now it was a small little studio apartment. It was, a little obviously modest, but it was a home nevertheless, and it was fantastic in my eyes because I was no longer having to sleep in the car, park by the lake, all that kind of stuff, and so yeah, a big upgrade. And it afforded me a little more independence. I got a little more independence. I thought, okay, car, I got a little place, and so yeah, I wasn't really thinking so much about my age and the fact that I was still in high school and all that sort of thing. And back then in the 1980s, things were generally easier to do. You could do things like that, especially in small town Alaska. You could get an apartment when you were probably 16 or 17. How? I don't know. I think the apartment was possibly my uncle's, but I'm not sure. I don't even remember how I got it. I think my older brother was involved with that, but nevertheless, I was there by myself. I had an apartment, and I had a car, and what helped a lot was the fact that I got a job. And so I was able to pay rent and all that, and I had to pay rent. And I had neighbors above me. It was a duplex, so neighbors were above. I was in the bottom floor. But I had a job working at Godfather's Pizza in a mall down the road. It was a strip mall back then. It's now a Target. And so yeah, there was some pride in that. I was like, okay, my situation's improving. I'm not in the car anymore. First of all, I'm not loitering around the store, trying to figure out what I'm going to eat, where I'm going to stay, where I'm going to sleep, all that sort of thing. And so, there was a gradual progression in terms of my life and the quality of life to a certain extent. No doubt about that. But, so there was some, I thought, hey, I'm going somewhere, right? It's kind of that you get a little prideful there, and I felt like it was a good pride in the sense that I was doing something positive. I had a better, more positive situation at that point in terms of the pride. I was like, okay, I can do this. I started to believe in myself a little bit more. I was certainly more independent, no doubt about it, because now I had a place. I had a job now at this point. So things were starting to kind of change for me at that point. So yeah, and of course, it gave me a lot more freedom as well. Obviously, I had more freedom, and people would come over. My friends, Todd, who I mentioned before, my best friend, who I'm still in contact with, over 40 years later. Just talked to him a couple days ago, and so yeah, it was nice. But then you have to imagine. Here's the other side of it: having an apartment when you're 17 in high school in a small town in Alaska, in Wasilla, Alaska, is that everybody suddenly becomes your friend. Everybody comes out of the woodwork. It's like when same thing when I was worked at Godfather's or an ice cream place before that. I think shortly before that or after, I can't remember, but suddenly everybody becomes your friend. They come out of, like I said, they come out of the woodworks. They like, hey, can I get some free pizza? Can I get some free this, free that, whatever, and then they find out you have an apartment. That changed everything. Because now everybody wants to come hang out, party, whatever, and that wasn't me. I understood that if I wanted to keep that place, keep a roof over my head, and I really understood it at that point, that I needed to be responsible. I needed to take responsibility in how I carried myself there, how I, took care of the apartment there, who I had over, those sorts of things. I didn't want to get kicked out. The neighbors above were pretty, they wanted me to keep it down. And so I did. But, people wanted to come over. People I didn't even know at high school, they weren't even my friends really, my circle of friends would come over and they wanted to hang out. Because, they're teenagers, right? We were all teenagers. Even though I had my own place, at the end of the day, I was a teenager. So they wanted to come over and hang out and stuff like that. I remember one morning, a quick story on this with the apartment. I woke up early in the morning. I don't know, I think it was on a Saturday morning. I'd worked, Friday night. I'd gone to school, worked, at Godfather's, got home really late. I was tired. And then I woke up, I don't know, 2, 3 in the morning, and there was like 50 people in my apartment, and the occupancy was probably 10. It was a small little place. And here's the funny thing, I didn't know any of these people. I came out of my bedroom, and I came out and I ran into a guy. The first guy I saw, he said to me, he said, "Who are you?" And I said, "Who are you? I live here," And so, it was one of those kind of deals. So I don't even know how they got in. I think somebody knew somebody who knew somebody who knew somebody who knew me, and the door was easy to open in the apartment, which it was. And it didn't lock. It didn't really close. You could lock it, but it was one of those kind where it just, you could get right in really easy. But I didn't worry too much about that. But yeah, stuff like that would happen. Other people came over randomly and they wanted to hang out. And I was like, hey, I didn't want to be jerky. I just wanted to tell them, look, I don't want to get in trouble here. This is, I was thinking in survival mode, and it was that independence in me to say, hey, I got to keep it down. I have neighbors, that sort of thing. I was already in that mode, more adulty mode, because I was really forced to be. I didn't really have a choice. And so yeah, I had my own apartment when I was 17, in high school in Wasilla, Alaska. And at this time, it was, 1986, which is the year I graduated from high school. But yeah, it was a good time, and I was more independent, no doubt about that. So during this time, while living in the apartment, my friend and I, Todd, my good friend Todd, you'll hear his name mentioned fairly often, that from time to time. Todd and I were big time into karate. We were studying karate. When I was a boy, I was always amazed by Bruce Lee and the whole karate thing, especially in the late 70s, early 80s. So I always wanted to get into it. It was something that was interesting to me. And in the same kind of for Todd, but for him it was kind of more it was a different thing. He wanted to study it, and it was good exercise and something to do. Whereas with me, yeah, it was all those things, but it was also the kind of the mystique of karate and the whole Bruce Lee thing. And so there was something that came along that kind of led into some changes for me at that point, shortly after getting out of high school there. And that will be, the subject for the next video. So definitely come back and watch. I hope you like, subscribe, and I really appreciate you tuning in and just being a part of my channel. It's something I'm really enjoying, going through this process. And I'm reliving a lot of stuff as I'm doing this too. It's kind of coming back to me. It's very nostalgic, but I have a lot of emotions and different things about this time living in the apartment when I was 17, and a lot of other things too that came along with it that also led into what I'll be talking about next week. So thanks again. I love you. God bless. I'll see you real soon.